Welcome back everyone to another FPL season. Thanks for joining me at FPL Squad Picks. We'll be taking a look at tips, transfers, strategies and anything else that gets thrown our way throughout the season. And for a bit of fun, why don't you join my league, the FPL Squad Picks League. Code's on the screen now, and I'll also include a link in the description below. If you like this video, please give it a like and hit subscribe. Hit the notification bell not to miss more content coming soon. So for our first Game Week 1 episode, we're going to be taking a look at team drafts, some potential player options, and also some of the new signings for this season and where they could play their part. So we start afresh with a brand new season, and we've got three new teams in the Premier League: Norwich, Watford and Brentford. Both Norwich and Watford are bringing some familiar faces back to the Premier League, but Brentford also bringing in some fresh talent with some good cheap price points that may be able to help us with our teams. So let's get started. So before we get into the drafts, we're going to look across each of the positions, and I've shortlisted a few players that you may want to consider when building your team. So we start off with the keepers. I've got here two of the premium options in Alisson and Mendy. Both have shown that they can keep some good clean sheets, and Alisson has a better run of fixtures at the moment with Liverpool. Apart from the first fixture against Crystal Palace, Chelsea's then do get a little bit more difficult. And with Liverpool having Van Dijk return, it shores things up at the back for them, even though they have recently lost Robertson. I have included Martinez on this, even though his price increase has put a few people off, but I still believe that his shot-stopping ability is still really good and can get some really high-score returns, even if they don't keep clean sheets. For more of a budget pick, I've also included Sanchez for Brighton and Forster for Watford. Even though there is some uncertainty with Forster's starting position against Bachmann, at 4 million he does free up some money to be able to be spent elsewhere if you're not looking for a 2-goalkeeper rotation in your plan. So next up, we've got the budget defenders. Now I could have listed some of the more premium options, but I think that's really down to yourselves in terms of how you're looking to build your team and where you can fit those in, and if you have enough money to spend on a defence. I think a lot of managers at the moment are actually looking more towards where can they save money to be able to get in some more premium attackers. So I thought this might be a bit more helpful in terms of building your team. So as you can see, I've included Tsimikas. He is taking over from Robertson as far as we're aware. Robertson did pick up an injury in a pre-season match. Even though it's unclear of how long he's going to be out for, he might be a great option now to bring in at 4 million, especially if we get word that he is going to be starting. But just to bear in mind that Robertson's return date isn't set, and it might be sooner than we think. So that might end up with a Liverpool player on your bench that isn't playing, but also then it means that you might have to book in a transfer. Other options across those budget defenders, I've got a few 4.5 million defenders. Across those three players that are 4.5 million, they have a bit of a mixed bag in terms of fixture difficulty. And when looking at the setup of your team, it's definitely worth looking at a few game weeks in advance just to see how the rotation is between the rest of your defenders. Like, I've seen quite a lot of people looking at Ben White, but aside from the Brentford game in the first game week, which is again a bit of an unknown with a championship team coming up, they then play Chelsea and Man City. So unless you're happy for him to go on the bench and you've got three other defenders at least to put in place of him, then you might want to look at someone else to be able to rotate across those next 3 game weeks. I've included 2 other 4 million defenders here in Amati, who again has made a few appearances for Leicester in the pre-season game weeks. I've also included Johnson. Now I haven't heard any word in terms of if he's going to be starting in the back line for West Ham or he's just going to be on the bench, but I know that he did play some minutes last season. So if you're really stuck for cash and you've used up all the 4 million defenders, he could be someone that you want to look at just to be able to fill the space and save the money. So moving on, we're looking at the mid-price midfielders. I haven't listed any of the premium midfielders here. I know that a lot of managers look to get those big hitters in, such as Salah, Bruno Fernandes, KDB, Son, and a lot more. But in order to get those big hitters, some money needs to be freed up across the team. So it's a good balance of getting a decent mid-price midfielder that's also going to play as a potential to come off the bench, or if you need to start them in some tricky fixtures and not having to take big hits across transfers. So here are a few that I've selected. I really like the look of Rafinha last season, and I think in staying at 6.5 million is a bargain. He takes set pieces for Leeds and he's really attacking. So I think if you can afford someone at that price point within your midfield, and you can get a good balance across the rest of the team, he's definitely someone to look at. If you can't quite stretch that far, Harrison was a close second in my eyes, just as attacking, but him not taking any of the set pieces did lower his chance of assists. There's also been a lot of talk of Buendia, who's now moved from Norwich and gone to Aston Villa. He did a great job whilst at Norwich, but obviously untested within the Aston Villa team, but could be a good differential for game week 1. And Aston Villa have a few decent fixtures going forward across the next 3 game weeks. I've also looked at the Brentford player, Mbeumo. I've only seen him play a few select times, and I did see him play back when Ollie Watkins was at Brentford, which whenever I saw him play was in a very attacking role and could be a potential that not a lot of people have gone for. So again, looking at a good differential that could free up some money across the rest of your team. And also Gilmore. So he's had a loan move from Chelsea over to Norwich. And at 4.5 million, I'm not sure if he's going to start, but if he gets some game time as well, he's a really cheap price point. He did really well for Scotland in the Euros and has the potential to get some points if you did need him coming off your bench. The only caveat to that really is that Norwich do have a really tough run of fixtures for at least the first 3 game weeks, so it's a case of that he might be warming the bench for at least the first few. And lastly, I've looked at some value forwards. So again, these aren't the premium big hitters, and they're not the cheap enablers that are going to sit on your bench and not get you any points. They're the mid-range that are going to hopefully tick over and get you some good points. Might actually have more value in them, even though that they've got a lesser price point than some of the big hitters. And might get some decent game time across the season. So I've started off with the new signing for Aston Villa with Danny Ings. He has been put at 8 million, but seeing he had a strong season at Southampton last year, hopefully this one in a very attacking Aston Villa team, and potentially partnered with Watkins and not in replace of Watkins, could benefit both of them in getting some good returns. Also, Aston Villa have a really good run of fixtures for at least the first 3 game weeks. But as always, it is a question of fitness and injury with Danny Ings, and if he can stay fit for the entire season. But that's nothing to say that you can't start with him, and if that does happen, look to transfer him out. With a similar position to Danny Ings, I've got Antonio. Again, with the injury worries, he can be a bit of a tricky pick sometimes. But if he stays fit and is on form, he's got some decent fixtures. He's shown over a few seasons that he can do the business, and definitely a strong forward pick. I've also included Wilson on this list. He did dip out last season with an injury, but when he was playing and in form, he was another forward that was ticking over with points nicely. I've also included the new Tony. He's had a lot of hype around him coming up from the Championship and performing really well, breaking records down there for goals. So it'll be interesting if he can do a similar job in the Premier League. If you like this video, please give it a like and hit subscribe. Hit the notification bell not to miss more content coming soon. If you'd like to keep up to date with the latest video posts, locked in team selections, and chat during the game week, then you can follow me on Twitter at FPL Squad Picks. So I've built a few different drafts, just looking at different strategies and potential formations to have, and how you'd like to potentially build your team. So for the first one I've got here, I've actually got quite a bit of money in the defence. So with this format, and looking at potentially having a bit of bench fodder in Obafemi and Forster, I'd probably look to go for a 4 at the back, 4 in the midfield, and 2 up top. And as you can see, I've included Target on here. And just as a side note, that Aston Villa have purchased Ashley Young back to the club, and he is in the same position, so it will be a bit of an unknown at the moment to how they're going to go forward, if Target is still the main man, or if they're going to share minutes and rotate, or if you'll find a way to put them both on the field, potentially bringing one up into the midfield. But Target being at 5 million, it's quite easy to be able to drop him down to a 4.5 or find another 5 million defender. So as I mentioned, this is quite a balanced squad, but with maybe a little bit more value leaning towards the defenders. And I'd probably be looking to play a lot of those defenders, but none of those are really going to be bench warmers. Aston Villa have a really good run of fixtures for the first 3 games. West Ham, they've got some decent fixtures, but Cresswell is also a set piece taker and has shown that he can get some good attacking returns through assists. And likewise with Shaw and Trent. So although this is quite a spread team and the money is evenly distributed across, if I did want to change it up slightly, I haven't fully utilised the 100 million within this team, so I did have a little bit more money to play with. So if I wanted to change this draft into a slightly more attacking team and free up some money and use the rest of the remaining budget to be able to push it into the attackers, I could do a simple switch with Cresswell down to Sofal. That saves 0.5 million. Again, Sofal is a very attacking defender, so it wouldn't be that much of a difference except for the set pieces that Cresswell takes. But that would then fund enough money to be able to let me get Mbeumo instead of Basuma, who is a lot more attacking, and also upgrade Tony to Ings. Now with Tony, it might be that he's set at a decent price at the moment, and if he does show that he can do it in the Premier League and score goals, you might see some price increase. But Danny Ings has been proven time and time again to be able to score those goals, and as long as he stays fit, he's definitely worth the 8 million. So this would change the setup a little bit more now. So I could go 3 at the back for the defenders, play 5 across the midfield, and 2 up top still leaving those 2 players as bench fodder in Obafembi and Forster. So as previously mentioned, it does look like that Target might not see full 90-minute games or be rotated across fixtures with Ashley Young. So it might be worth downgrading him and saving that money to use elsewhere. So for instance, I could take him out, drop him to one of those 4 million defenders that we mentioned earlier in the video. For now, I've just put in Johnson, but equally that could be Amati or Tsimikas. But if I did bring in Tsimikas, the move would have to be then Jota out. With taking money from Target down to one of those 4 million defenders, it then frees up enough for me to do a Jota to Havertz. Now recently we've had word obviously that Lukaku is on his way to Chelsea, so I'm not really sure how this will change up the team. I'm not sure if he'll make it for the first game of the season, so definitely something to keep an eye on with the team news. But even if Havertz doesn't get that sort of number 9 position and looking to be the spearhead of the attack, I'm sure that he will still be played, still be involved with the forward attacks. And if you've watched any of Lukaku's games in the Euros or at Inter Milan, he is quite happy to sort of interchange and play in that sort of number 10 role now and again to assist goals as well as score them. So this might help both Havertz and Werner. The only thing that sort of pulls me back from going for a lot of Chelsea players is even though they start off with Crystal Palace, their fixtures then do get a lot more difficult in the next coming game weeks. With that mindset again of looking to push some of that budget into the attack and even into the forwards, there's a few other options that you could do in terms of getting 3 playing forwards. If I was to look at taking out Havertz and taking out Mbeumo, I could go back to Jota to save 1 million, and I could drop the 5.5 million Mbeumo down to Gilmour at 4.5, so I've saved 2 million. That means I could upgrade Obafemi to Tony. So that would give me a more nailed on starter, again with that potential for him to have a price increase if he does well. So this would then give me the option to look at a format of a 3-4-3, still with an attacking potential of Gilmour if he does make some starts for Norwich, and also another option of some decent defenders to be able to rotate. So once you have a more set idea of how your squad setup is going to look like, if it's going to be a lot more defensive based, a lot more attacking based, you then start playing around with a lot more of the players. And obviously I've got in Salah and Fernandes as 2 quite big hitters there, and obviously taking up a lot of the budget. There is a temptation to be able to take one of those out and potentially spread it across the team. So for instance, if I was to take out Fernandes and also take out Jota, I could play Sancho in Bruno Fernandes' place, hoping that he would have a good attacking return potential as a new player for United. But that also meant that I could upgrade Jota to Son. Now I'd like to think that both Sancho and Son have just as much potential as Bruno and Jota to be able to get points. But being that Sancho isn't a certainty for that first fixture of the season, and also Son has a very difficult fixture in Man City for that first game, it does make it difficult to take out Bruno, especially with him being on penalties. So that's something that I'm still toying with at the moment, even though last season there is a bit of fear of missing out with me, because I think I had Son for maybe the first game week, took him out for the second, which was a difficult fixture. He went on a mad run. By the time I brought him back in, that mad run had dropped off. But again, even if I didn't decide to go for Son, I think the spread of players, they have still the same good potential to be able to get points, with Bruno against the Leeds team, and you've got Jota against Norwich. So long as he starts, you'd like to think that both of those have an equal chance of being able to get the same points as both Sancho and Son. So for this draft, one player that is sort of sticking out for me in my mind is looking at potentially upgrading Sanchez to Martinez. I know that a lot of managers have gone for Sanchez and his ownership is quite high, being that he's got a really good price point and some decent fixtures. But based on what Martinez did last season, with the amount of shots stopped and clean sheets that he got and bonus points, it is very tempting to go back with him again this season, especially given that Aston Villa have a really good run of fixtures for the first few. It is a bit annoying that he's gone up by 1 million, but that was almost expected given that he did so well. And with a lot of managers thinking that potentially that he is not worth that extra 1 million now, and especially if you've got an option like Sanchez, I still think that he could come back to sting a lot of managers that haven't got him. So if I did want to bring him in, it would mean obviously reducing that attacking threat that I have now with a front three. But if I was to downgrade that 2 million that I put into bringing Ivan Toney in, I could not only spread that across and upgrade Sanchez to Martinez, but I could also upgrade Gilmour back to Mbeumo. So it's sort of keeping that attacking threat from Brentford and also getting a good shot stopper at the back. As mentioned earlier, I am a fan of having a rotating pair for goalkeepers, and I think that is where you can pick up a lot of points. A lot of managers will just stick to one goalkeeper, keep with those throughout the season and have one as bench fodder. But obviously you're going to come up against some difficult fixtures where you may lose your clean sheets and not pick up those save points. So if you can have a pair that do rotate nicely throughout the season, I think if I was to have enough money, I probably would go for Martinez and Sanchez. And with a few right selections and picking up a few clean sheets, that could be the edge that you need within your mini leagues and get your overall rank up. But it is personal preference, and I know that a lot of managers do like to stick with one goalkeeper and save the money by going for a cheap 4 million or 4.5 as a backup. So this last draft sort of brings me back to the initial draft that I started with, just with a few tweaks, a few downgrades and upgrades from the defence to attack. But it certainly brings back in Bruno Fernandes, but it also means I had to downgrade some of the midfield, but it's also including Martinez at the back. I hope that run through of the drafts was helpful for you in looking at your own team in terms of where to save money, what strategies you'd like to do, and what formation you want to build your team as. I know that since this video I've also changed my team multiple times, and I probably still will continue to tweak until the final deadline on Friday. And if things weren't difficult enough, we also got some new transfers, and there's also a few players that I haven't mentioned that I thought I'd just give a quick nod to in this last part of the video. So I've just listed up a few here, some of the new signings that people have been mentioning, such as Buendia. You've got Grealish, Lukaku, who still hasn't been priced yet on the game, and obviously that potential move that might be happening with Kane to Man City. But there's also one or two other players there that could be useful. You've got Harrison. If you're someone that's got Rafinha and you're looking to save that 0.5 million just to be able to get another big hitter in, Harrison could be that person that frees that up for you in the midfield. Also, if you're a manager that's happy to downgrade a Bruno Fernandes, say, to free up some money across that midfield, with United having quite a lot of players out at the moment in terms of Rashford's injury and recovery, and Cavani not playing in the pre-season, and a bit of uncertainty to whether or not Sancho will play the first game of the season, Greenwood could be a good option. And with him only being 7.5 million, that could allow enough money for you to bring someone in like Mahrez. Man City are also in a similar position, where unless they sign Kane as a forward, they've only got Jesus to pick from. It's rumoured that Bernardo Silva is looking to push for a move from the club. Foden still has an ankle injury that he's dealing with from the Euros, so it could see that Mahrez gets some good game time across the first few fixtures of the season. Feel free to leave a comment below about who you think will be vital this week and going forward. If you like this video, please give it a like and hit subscribe. Hit the notification bell not to miss more content coming soon. Thanks for watching.